But I do know this stuff is coming. Man, it's gotta come. What's gonna stop it? What's gonna stop it?
I'm wondering what is happening to the world. Everything is changing.
The very idea of human being some sort of natural concept is really going to change.
Our bodies will be so high-tech, we won't be able to really distinguish between what's natural and what's artificial.
You might ask yourself, can we get to be superhumans?
There's all these other ways that games are creeping into places we didn't think about. Fantasy football's been around forever. It used to be a nerdly game for nerdly nerds. Now everyone plays it. Your grandmother probably plays fantasy football. Like, everybody is playing it. It's just everywhere. It's a game that leeches off a game. Geocaching. Because it's cooler to go for a walk in the woods when there's a treasure chest at the end. The Simpsons had their 20th anniversary, and Fox said, we're going to do a scavenger hunt. In each of the shows we have this week, we're going to hide a Simpsons reference in every show. Watch all the shows, find the references, and we'll give you a prize. Watching television became a game. DARPA wanted to figure out what are people able to figure out through crowdsourcing, so they made a game. They put these red balloons all over the country and said, let's see who can find them first. And everybody raced to find the red balloons and did DARPA's research for them. Weight Watchers, they have this whole point system, which is very much like a game. And if anybody has the new Ford hybrid car, okay, I got it. It's got a speedometer, and then it's got a gas gauge. And what are those leaves? What the hell is that? The more gas you save, the more the plant grows. They put a virtual pet in your car, and it changes the way people drive. Games have crept out and they're going everywhere. Who do you think is designing these games? Skilled game designers? No, not really. Just like whoever's there is doing it. Imagine if skilled game designers get a hold of these kinds of things. Lee Sheldon is a great example. He's a game designer, some of you I'm sure know. He's teaching at University of Indiana now. And one of the first things he did was, you know what, this grading system kind of sucks. Because school's a game, right? You go, you get scores, you take, and you come out, there's a leaderboard, And he said, I'm going to do this better. He doesn't give out grades for each assignment. He gives out experience points. And you level up through the class. And so class attendance is up, class participation is up, homework is turned in often and better because it's a better structure, it's a better system. Imagine when the game designers get a hold of all this garbage, the gas points and the shopping points and your coffee points and your airline points, all these points and points and points. Imagine when they're all designed and when they can be sensed. And these things start to come together a little bit. Because sensors are what's happening now. That's what's changing things. Natal is going to come out. And it's got cameras. It's going to sense every joint of your body. The DSi is out, and it's got cameras, and no one knows what they're for. But someone's going to figure it out. And technology keeps getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And there's going to be sensors everywhere detecting so many things in your life. And these things are going to be able to be used for gameplay.
When we first started looking into it, we couldn't believe it. Even now, looking at this, I keep thinking that there's gotta be something about this that I just don't understand. Like, I must be reading this wrong. It's just so clearly something out of dystopian science fiction. And yet, here it is in our world, and people are actually embracing it. Apparently, China has gamified being an obedient citizen. Under the innocuous name of Sesame Credit, China has created a score for how good a citizen you are. And that's one of the scariest things I've heard in quite a while. It's jointly run by Tencent, yes, that Tencent, the one that owns Riot Games and has a significant share in Epic and Activision Blizzard, and also the ascendant Chinese competitor to Amazon, Alibaba, hence the name Sesame. So the owners of China's largest social networks have partnered with the government to create something akin to the US credit score. But instead of measuring how regularly you pay your bills, it measures how obediently you follow the party line. They dredge data from your social network, so if you post pictures of Tiananmen Square or share a link about the recent stock market collapse, your Sesame credit score goes down. Share a link from the state-sponsored news agency about how good the economy's doing, and your score goes up. But Alibaba and Tencent are also the largest online retailers in China, so Sesame Credit is also able to pull data from your purchases. If you're making purchases the state deems valuable, like work shoes or local agricultural products, your score goes up. If you import anime from Japan, though, down the score goes. And this score has real-world consequences. Like many games, Sesame Credit has tiers and levels, and having a high score gives you special benefits, like making it easier to get the paperwork you need to travel, or making it easier to get a loan. Now, currently, there are no consequences for having a low score, but there's been talk about implementing penalties once the system becomes mandatory in 2020. Penalties like slower internet speeds for low-scoring citizens, or even restricting the jobs that a low-scoring person's allowed to hold. But there's one more layer to Sesame Credit, and here's where this goes from being repulsive to downright insidious. Because this is all part of a social network, it also scans your friends. So you will lose points for having friends with low obedience scores. And it tells you this. At any point, anybody can check anyone else's score. And when you check your own score, Sesame Credit provides a handy map of your friends to show you who's dragging your score down. Have you ever had that thing where you play a game with somebody who wasn't doing very well, and you've tried to change their behavior to make them do better? Or maybe after a while, you just sort of stopped playing with the people who were holding you back? That's at the heart of how this system works. And it's also what makes this one of the most terrifying tools of authoritarian oppression I've ever read about. Because, like, mass censorship, jail time, assassinations, those are all big, messy implements for keeping a population in line. That messiness and severity foster resentment, eventually rebellion. They're expensive, they're unwieldy. In the end, those tools are impossible to maintain. But social pressure? Ostracization? Those things are free. They happen on their own. And as a government tool, they don't have nearly the same potential for going embarrassingly, disastrously wrong. With a system like this in place, a government doesn't even have to tell neighbor to spy on neighbor, to rat each other out, because that's all built into a seemingly innocuous game system. The government need not step in. Re-education will be handled for them by friends, classmates, and relatives who want to maintain a high score. And if that doesn't work, then potentially dangerous ideas still end up quarantined by the social isolation this game system causes. Express or help to spread too many radical ideas, and people will stop associating with you. And not because some jackbooted thug showed up at the door with threats, but simply because associating with somebody with those ideas will lose them all the privileges they've worked so hard to obtain. It recontextualizes obedience to an authoritarian regime. In the past, you obeyed such powers because you were afraid. Fear kept you motivated. But fear is negative. It fosters resentment. The world we're stepping into instead uses positive reinforcement to promote being subservient to the will of the regime. It's Big Brother's kinder, gentler hand. And the things that make this scary is that we've seen the efficacy of this only too well in games. You may not actually know this, but when World of Warcraft was in its early stages of development, it had an unrested penalty mechanic that started limiting experience gains for players who had played too much. And players hated it. They resented it and they complained about it every day. So, after brainstorming on this for a while, Blizzard had the idea to simply change how the mechanic was presented. Without changing any of the existing numbers or systems, they started referring to the unrested experience penalty state as normal and made it the default. And they started calling the original normal experience gain state as rested. That's all they changed, and everybody loved it. People would log on every day just to get that bonus. Positive reinforcement works wonders. But unlike World of Warcraft, which built a system just to get people to embrace meaningless grinding, Sesame Credit has built a system to get people to enjoy falling into line. Now, the system's not mandatory yet. It's opt-in right now, but it's going to be mandatory in 2020, and there's a terrible brilliance to phasing that in. The early adopters are going to be people excited about this system, people who are already patriotic and are eager for anything that'll help display that patriotism to the world. And as early adopters, they're going to talk it up. They're going to give it an air of being positive and fun. Then it'll be foisted on the society as a whole. More than that, though, the early adopters are going to compete. Already, you can see hundreds of thousands of tweets displaying people's high scores or showing off the new milestones they've hit, giving hard numbers to their patriotism and giving them bragging rights for being the most patriotic, most right-thinking person they know. And that's gonna set the tone for how Sesame Credit is intended to be used, as a competition to see who can agree with the government the most. This is the use of game systems that frightens me the most. Because to most people, Sesame Credit will seem benign, perhaps even fun. It's a conversation starter, something to share with your friends. But it's making heavy use of all the psychological motivators that we game makers deploy in scoring systems and ladders and levels, systems that we build to shape play habits and to keep people coming back.
New Microsoft Bitcoin mining system set to transform BTC mining. This article sounds like they probably basically rewrote the Microsoft press release. The latest patent by Microsoft relates to a crypto mining system that rewards humans with cryptocurrency in lieu of performing physical tasks. The promising new Bitcoin mining system aims to lower computational power required to undertake the massive crypto mining operations, whilst increasing processing speed. The patent document of Microsoft Bitcoin mining system sheds more light on the innovative concept that combines both health and crypto. Two horrible tastes that are going to taste pretty horrible together. Human bodily data is recorded when a person undertakes any sort of physical activity. The information is received in the form of either a body heat signal or a brainwave. For example, watching a video, a New World Next Week video. No, they won't give you credits for that one probably, but watching a video will generate a recordable brainwave, which will in turn be rewarded with an equivalent amount of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I guess it could be worse. Like the implementation of a new social credit system that's automatic and functions on bodily functions and other things that are unconscious, as this patent goes on to state. And I hope people will go and read through the patent itself. It is illuminating in a number of respects. It says, for example, viewing advertisements or using certain internet services will be the types of tasks that will be monitored. And of course, this all ties back into what we've talked about here on the program before, about all the different kind of mind-reading technologies that they've been working on for years now and developing so that they can tell, what picture you're looking at just from your brainwave activity and stuff like this. Well, this is going to be used as the first order, of course, monetarily, to generate money. Oh, hey, if you will view an advertisement, we'll give you one of these digital coins in your Microsoft wallet. Can you imagine how this type of system might be abused? A brainwave reading technology literally implanted in everyone's heads. I wonder what could go wrong. This is exactly what they're attempting to patent now with patent, yes, let's get it on the record, 2026 0606. I don't know. Just coincidence, I guess. But anyway, it's absolute insanity. And of course, it all ties in together. The part of the COVID world order and the normalization of contact tracing, pervasive surveillance of everything you do everywhere you go. And oh, by the way, we're working on mind-reading technologies that will give you rewards for using certain internet services like MSN.com, I guess. And, eventually, of course, the carrot will be countered with the stick. And we saw you watching New World Next Week. -1 credit for you. This is where this ultimately goes. Everyone knows it. It's now in popular culture with Black Mirror and things like this. So I think people understand where this is going. Again, the only question is, are you going to take it when they come along offering you this great new deal? Hey, get a Microsoft wallet and get this brain chip implanted, or whatever it will end up being. Of course, it will not be a brain chip right away. It's going to be some sort of sensing device. But the point is, at this point, at least, we can still say no. I mean, that still is within our power, so let's not forget that.
We're, before too long, going to get to the point where every soda can, every cereal box is going to be able to have a CPU, a screen, and a camera on board it, and a Wi-Fi connector, so that it can be connected to the internet. And what will that world be like? Well, I think it'll be like this. You'll get up in the morning to brush your teeth, and the toothbrush can sense that you're brushing your teeth, and so, hey, good job for you. 10 points for brushing your teeth. And it can measure how long, and you're supposed to brush them for 3 minutes, and you did. Good job, you brushed your teeth for 3 minutes. And so you get a bonus for that. And hey, you brushed your teeth every day this week, another bonus. And who cares? The toothpaste company, the toothbrush company, the more you brush, the more toothpaste you use, they have a vested financial interest. You go to breakfast, there's the cornflakes. On the back, there's a little web game that you can play. While you eat, instead of reading the back, you play a game while you eat your cornflakes. And you get that, and you get 10 points just for eating the cornflakes. And then it turns out you can see your list of friends who also have cornflakes and the scores that they got because your Wi-Fi and Facebook connected and everything. And so, you get 5 bonus points because you just beat out one of your friends at the cornflakes game. So then you go and you get on the bus. The bus? Why am I taking the bus? You're taking the bus because the government has started giving out all kinds of bonus points to people who use public transportation. And you can use these points for tax incentives. And while you're sitting on the bus riding to work and you're playing your little Tetris and getting a few points here and there, you suddenly remember, I had this dream last night. I had a dream that my mother was dancing with this giant Pepsi can. And then you realize, oh yeah, the REM-tertainment system, right, which is the thing you put in your ear and it can sense when you enter REM sleep, and then it starts putting little advertisements out there to try and influence your dreams. And then you can fill out a little form. It's a test to see if those things came through into your dreams. And if they did, then big points for you, right? And you can use these points at the grocery store or whatever. And you get to work on time. Good job. Excellent. You got to work on time. And you get a special bonus, I don't know, for something else. Maybe because you've been there on time all week. And then there's your office mate. And he's like, check out, I got the new digital tattoo. Right? It's a tattoo that you can change the image because it's got like e-ink in it in your arm. Right? So you can change the image all the time to whatever you want. But a lot of people are using Tattoogle AdSense. Right? And so he's got the ads up. And you're thinking, you're really dumb because Tattoogle AdSense has light sensors in it. And so that when your arm is covered, you're not going to get any money from people seeing the ads. And you show them how yours is lower on the arm so it's more exposed, so you get more points for it. And just then, you realize that the two of you have your ads suddenly synchronized just by chance. And so, you say, link sync, and you get 30 points for noticing a link sync that the two of us had that. And he says, Pop-Tarts, because they're both Pop-Tart ads, and the system is listening, and it can tell that we said Pop-Tarts. And then we do high five, because the body electricity sensors can tell when you do a high five. And that's the rule. That's how the game works. That when the ads line up, because it makes you pay more attention to the ads. Because that's how these games will work. The games will be tricking you to pay more attention to ads. So then you go to lunch, and you've had Dr. Peppers all week, and so you got to have another Dr. Pepper because you got 10 points, 10 points, 10 points, 10 points, and then you have another one, and there's another one, but there's a special with Dr. Pepper this week. If you have 5 Dr. Peppers in a week, 500 bonus points, so you're definitely going to take advantage of that. And then you got a meeting at another building. It's a half a mile away. And you could take the shuttle over, but you decide, I'm going to walk because the health insurance plan that you're on gives you bonus points if you walk like more than a mile each day. And we can sense that easily, through your digital shoes. And if you get your heart rate up about a certain amount, then you get more bonus points from your health insurance company. So then you're going shopping on the way home, and man, this is like a place you can get a lot of points, and it's really complicated, so you don't figure it out. You let your app figure it out. It looks at all the point systems you have, it looks at what you want, and then it tells you which ones to buy in order to get, ooh, wow, a lot of points just because I made good choices shopping. And then you get home and your daughter's like, oh, I got my report card. And you're like, oh, good job. You're getting 2,000 points from the state for getting such good grades. And you're getting 5,000 as a parent from the Obama bonus for the good parenting bonus, which you're excited because you can use that as tax relief. And then you say, hey, wait a minute. Did you practice your piano? And she's like, yeah, I practiced my piano. Well, what score did you get? He's like, oh, well, I got 150,000. 150,000, that's the best you've ever had on that particular sonata. That's 9,000 points given by the Arts Council for your scholarship fund. So, go you, right? And then you go and watch television, and I don't even want to talk about this. It's just points. Because there's eye sensors, right, that can tell when you're watching the ads. So you want to watch the ads, certain ads especially, because you're going to get points for them. And your remote has a little screen on it and with a little camera, so you can kind of be live chat with other people are watching the show, and you play all these games, and you get all these points while you watch television. That would be a very natural thing to do. Then finally, the day's over. You're going to bed. You sit down with your new Kindle 3.0, which of course has the eye tracking sensor in it that can tell what you've read and how much you've read of the book. And it's important to read the whole book because then if you leave a review on Amazon, you'll get super bonus points if it knows you read the whole book through. And as you finish the book, you're very surprised. Oh, did I mention that Microsoft acquired Amazon a couple of years back? But they did. And you get an achievement unlocked. This thing's been tracking you for 20 years. You've finished 500 novels. And this is like a big achievement, and you're thinking, I'm really embarrassed that my 500th novel was this dumb Star Trek novel that I'm reading, because I'm going to remember that forever. And then you start thinking about all these achievements and points and things, and realizing that, you have no idea what books your grandparents read or where they went on their daily basis, but these sensors that we're going to have on us and all around us and everywhere are going to be tracking and watching what we're doing forever. And our grandchildren will know every book that we read. That legacy will be there, will be remembered. And you get to thinking about how, wow, is it possible maybe that since all this stuff is being watched and measured and judged, that maybe I should change my behavior a little bit and be a little better than I would have been? And so it could be that these systems are just all crass commercialization and it's terrible, but it's possible that they'll inspire us to be better people if the game systems are designed right. Anyway, I'm not sure about all that, but I do know this stuff is coming. Man, it's gotta come. What's going to stop it?
We have ratings on Uber, 5 stars for me, right?
Gotcha.
Dating apps allow us to rate our matches, and cloud sites sum up our influence on social media. With technology like blockchain, all of that information could be easily stored and used to create a complete digital picture and history for every person. In China, they've already gotten started, using their own formula to give everyone a rating. It's all part of the Chinese government's new social credit system. By 2020, its 1.3 billion residents will be part of a national database and given a rating to reflect their trustworthiness, based on everything from how well they comply with social norms and rules, to their financial history and even minor traffic violations. That number will affect everything from how freely someone is able to travel, whether they'll qualify for loans, and even where they can send their kids to school. It's the next level in the country's quest for ultimate surveillance, and 12 million people have already been banned from domestic travel since trials of the program first launched for what the government is calling bad behavior. If this sounds to you like it's straight out of an episode of Black Mirror, that is because it basically is. One of the Netflix series' most well-known episodes, Nosedive, is about a future society where everyone is given a ranking out of 5 stars, and every interaction is rated by the people they encounter. A low rating leads to real-world consequences. Here in the United States, it seems like it's only a matter of time until someone takes all of the information out there about us and consolidates it into one rating. And it may not be our government, but the next Mark Zuckerberg.
What if everything you did, every way you behaved, was tracked, logged, and used by some Orwellian overseer? What if you were given a score, depending on how you acted? Pay your taxes on time, earn some extra points. Fall out of line like jaywalk, or buy too many video games, no really that's a thing, and lose a few points. In other words, welcome to China, ni hao. The country is poised to roll out a nationwide social credit scoring system by next year, and it's meant to track, reward, and punish. The idea is to discourage what authorities consider antisocial behavior. China calls it positive coercion. I call it a ripoff of the Netflix science fiction series Black Mirror.
I see there's one standby seat on another plane leaving tonight. That's reserved for members of our Prime Flight program. You gotta be a 4.2 or over to qualify.
Oh, I'm a 4.2.
I'm afraid you're actually a 4.183.
This new system relies on massive amounts of data. Think social media, health records, personal finances, online shopping, plus all the information that comes from facial recognition technology installed on those millions of tiny cameras. And the consequences are real. Say that your score drops too low. What happens then? Well, like Black Mirror, you better cancel those vacation plans. You'll be blacklisted from buying a train or a plane ticket. That's already happened to more than 22 million would-be Chinese travelers. It doesn't stop there. Try to get a bank loan. Get your kid into a good school with a bad social credit score and no $5 million to pay him off. See what happens. Don't even get me started on China's persecuted groups. Beijing is already using next-generation technology to keep track of the country's 11 million Uyghurs. There are currently over 1 million of them in detention and re-education camps. What do you think their ratings are? Meanwhile, AI, automation, and machine learning are all bringing surveillance and ranking capabilities to a whole new level. Even behavior like smoking in a no-smoking area, no. Checking your phone, definitely not. Or just crossing the street in the wrong place will contribute to the data stream that feeds the beast. Of course, that's in China. That kind of thing could never happen in the United States, right? Well, let's take a look. Unlike China, there is no national US strategy when it comes to big data or artificial intelligence, but there are big companies, really big companies, and they're looking to reap financial gain by vacuuming up every bit of your personal information they can get their hands on, and there's plenty of it. We collectively generate about 2.5 quintillion bytes of data every day. I honestly have no idea how much that is, but it sounds like a lot. It pours out of us without our even realizing it. Uber and Google Maps, that's where we go. Facebook and Instagram, that's what we like. Amazon, what we buy. Venmo, who we pay. There are even apps that track our heart rates, blood pressure, and the number of steps we take. There's a reason tech companies like Amazon, Google, and Apple are investing big into your healthcare. It's another data point of all of those consumers. And all that information is going somewhere, being used, being monetized. Only about 11% of people polled say they're willing to share their health data with a technology company. Maybe it's because of data breaches and hackers. Or maybe it's because they realize that by giving up their data, they're likely to be nudged, maybe even change their behavior based on what incentives technology does and does not offer for their bottom line. If so, that means, like China, these American companies are starting to make decisions about our lives that are outside of our control.
They're constantly monitored by facial recognition cameras that are able to instantly put a face to a name. Now, the Chinese are also ranked, given a mark out of a possible 950 points. A score in the 700s is considered good. Around the 500 mark is not. For now, the number is a sort of bank credit rating, keeping track of everyone's spending habits.
I think being ranked is a good thing. A society has to have rules.
It forces us to be well behaved.
It may seem scary, but it's just like that here. We're used to it, and anyway, we don't have a choice.
But in an effort to keep all of its subjects in line, Beijing is taking the system a step further in 2020. It's aggregating data gathered by banks, private companies, and the state to rate if someone's a good or bad citizen.
By using the most data possible, the so-called big data, the system will play an important role in rebuilding a moral society.
The state will go over every detail of a person's life with a fine-tooth comb. Their financial situation, spending habits, career, even behavior on social media. Criticizing the government online or displaying outward signs of wealth is a no-no. On the other hand, praising the party or giving blood increases your social credit. Xiao Wen-Wang is a model citizen. She lives in Nanjing, a testing ground for social ranking. Married with a child, she has a job in a retirement home, no debts, and she wouldn't dream of jaywalking.
As a good citizen, I respect the rules of the road. If I didn't, I'd lose points on my social credit.
In theory, everything can be taken into account in the social score, even the most innocuous errands like supermarket shopping. When Xiao Wen-Wang makes an electronic payment, her purchases tell the state a lot about her. Buying cigarettes would count against her. On the other hand, nappies show she's an attentive mother. Beer could indicate alcoholism. She'd be better off buying water. In this pilot city of 8 million people, there are only 18,000 model citizens. For Xiao Wen-Wang, there are perks to be had, such as paying half price for the bus.
I get discounts for all public services, even at museums. And the library is free for me, thanks to my score.
A good score brings benefits, but people with low scores lose rights. The cinema names and shames people considered untrustworthy, plastering their details, even their addresses, across big screens.
It's a matter of principle. Those people have to be condemned.
Those people aren't honest, so they have to pay the price.
It's only right to pay your debts. You have to blacklist those that don't.
The Supreme Court has created a blacklist for so-called bad citizens, those whose ratings have dropped to 0. On it are companies, but also 23 million people to date. Among them is this journalist Liu Hu. He got a little too close to uncovering corruption among high-profile party members. After being sued for defamation by the subject of a story he'd written, he was blacklisted. He only realized when he tried to buy a train ticket and was told he was banned from traveling.
That tells me I'm still on the blacklist.
Punished because he's been branded untrustworthy by the state.
Once you're blacklisted, you can no longer get a bank loan, start a business, buy an apartment, or even send your children to a private school.
Liu Hu is among a tiny minority of people who have dared to criticize the system, which some are calling a digital dictatorship.
I worry, because I think many people like me will be deprived of individual freedoms, and all of us will live with restrictions of one kind or another.
After our meeting, Liu Hu learned that his name had been removed from the blacklist, but he still has a long way to go if he doesn't want to languish at the bottom of the social credit hierarchy.
We don't need television. Not as long as we have our imagination.
Imagine someone who is COVID positive, moving along Spear Boulevard in Denver, stopping along the way at Starbucks, a grocery store, a gas station. The red dots represent those potentially exposed. This is how digital contact tracing would work through your cell phone data. Officials could contact and contain those exposed. Many believe this is a promising new way to stop the spread of coronavirus as states begin to reopen for business. But using your smartphone to silently track you is viewed by others as a violation of privacy. So we're going 360 with viewers like you, a privacy law expert, a cybersecurity company, and we start with an epidemiologist who explains how contact tracing has traditionally worked when someone tests positive.
When we interview them, we get a list of every single person that they've been in contact with. And then we reach out to those people. We call them and tell them.
It's a labor-intensive process and requires an army of healthcare workers.
Contact tracing technology. It's being hailed by some as the way out of lockdown.
The New South Wales government regulation, we will have to close the beach.
In Australia, some states are to relax their strict guidelines as COVID-19 case numbers remain low. And the government hopes to keep it that way by launching a new contact tracing app called COVID Safe. It uses Bluetooth to log when someone's been close to an infected person. Authorities want a 40% take-up to make it effective. COVID Safe is based on an app Singapore is already using, and governments around the world are working on developing their own.
The app is going to be one of the building blocks of how to get out of the epidemic. And we have sort of two estimates. We found that when we projected over the next 3 months, for every 1 to 2 users who download the app and who adhere to the instructions, you'll prevent 1 infection. And we found that for this intervention alone to stop resurgence of the epidemic, about 60% of the population would have to use the app.
And for many, privacy remains a major concern. But civil liberties groups there and around the world say there are still real questions to be answered about the potential for government surveillance and whether personal data can be kept safe. An app may also not be enough on its own. In Germany, the government says it's still hiring a large contact tracing team, along with developing its own technology.
We think a ratio of roughly a team of 5 for 20,000 people is roughly what we have to come up with. That's a huge number.
Proponents of contact tracing apps say it's the best way out of lockdown. By identifying and isolating new cases, a second wave of infections could be avoided. But the challenge may well be winning over a public used to privacy.
Denver public health epidemiologist Tori Burkett says they did this right before the COVID stay-at-home order went in place.
Sometimes we call people and, they've only been in contact with, say, one person. Sometimes we call people prior to the stay-at-home orders and they've been in contact with 50 people.
Digital contact tracing could automate and speed up much of that work, and it's cheaper than the old school method of having to hire hundreds of healthcare workers. It's already being used in other parts of the world. Both Google and Apple have modified their systems to allow our Bluetooth functions to do this work.
You would be scarily surprised at how accurate it can be.
Chris Nyheis owns the cybersecurity company Vigilant. He says your data is already out there.
You have a weather app that you allow to have your location. You have Google Maps that says where you live.
Those apps all work together in contact tracing.
Inside these policy documents that we quickly just accept, many of them say, look, they're allowed to use that data with any affiliate partners that they have.
In this case, the partner would be the government, more specifically your local public health department. Once someone self-reports testing positive, phone data is used to trace where they've been the last few weeks and who was near them. It then sends a text alert, much like those Amber Alerts we've all received on our smartphones. In this case, it would read, "Alert, you have recently been exposed to someone who tested positive for COVID-19. It may seem sci-fi-ish.
You got an iPhone? Yeah.
But DU privacy law professor Bernard Chow explained to us in pretty simple terms how it works.
Go all the way to the bottom.
In an iPhone, just go to Privacy, Location Services, at the bottom of that, System Services, and then Significant Locations.
It's on. All right, Lou, where have you been?
Holy cow, you're right.
In my case, it shows everywhere I've been dating back to Chicago in February, down to the very hotel I stayed in. Chow says if the government does choose to access this data to stop the spread, there must be assurances to the public the government won't store it for long or expose the name of someone COVID positive.
They could be exercised and, avoided like lepers.
He says this will only work if it's anonymous, meaning whoever gets the alert doesn't know who it is they came in contact with who's positive. And the state would have to delete that information after so many days.
Even if we, the government, say that we're not going to use it, there's a temptation by someone to abuse it and use it.
Nyheis sees even more sinister dangers with the idea.
I could potentially drive around your neighborhood, wait for an alert to go off when I'm close proximity to a house, and I can start to pinpoint every home that has somebody that has it in. You can isolate people within your community. There can be hate crimes around that information.
Not surprisingly, public opinion is mixed.
If it keeps us healthy and safe, then I have nothing to hide and I'm okay with it.
I see the good in it, that we want to get down to the bottom of this, but bad of the privacy issue.
Burkett says health departments that collect the data would treat it like hospitals treat patient information.
We follow HIPAA regulations, and so we do not release the names of people.
Most agree it would have to be voluntary in order to earn public trust because, let's face it, it essentially boils down to government surveillance.